my screen as well. So let me know when you can see my screen. Once you guys can see my screen, just let me know.
No, we can see your screen.
You guys see my screen now, right? Okay, awesome. So today we'll be looking at requirement prioritization, requirement attributes. We've touched on requirement attributes in the past when we mentioned invest, and then we also look at documentation formats. What are the different documentation formats that we have? I know I've spent a lot of time talking about things like BRD, which is business requirement documents, things like FRD, which is functional requirements document. Mind you, some people call it BRS, business requirement specification, and some call it FRS, functional requirement specification. But it doesn't matter the name they call it. Don't get confused about it. They still mean the same thing. Okay. So take an example look at a template. Now look at the sample I prepared for the e-voting requirements or solution that we have been discussing along the class. Okay. So we start with requirement prioritization, prioritizing requirements. Just as Ikechukwu mentioned in the class, mentioned earlier on when I asked about Valentine, he said that Valentine needed to wait for him to attend class, right? That basically means that he prioritized the class ahead or above the Valentine mood or feeling or celebration or time, right? So for him, he has his own reason. He has his own reason for prioritizing the class over Valentine, right? But you also agree with me that even though the class is of high importance to Ikechukwu, and I don't know if Ikechukwu is married or not, but assuming Ikechukwu is married and his wife just put to bed this evening, let's say just 1 hour ago, you agree with me that Ikechukwu will not be in class, right? His priorities would actually change in the sense that he will prioritize spending time with his wife and the newborn baby than sitting in class this evening. Now, I said that because many people confuse the fact that when it comes to prioritization, prioritization is not cast in stone. In the sense that when you prioritize a requirement, you don't say because I'm giving this thing a high priority and then I've given this other one a low priority. It doesn't mean that tomorrow or even today, what was considered to be a low priority might end up becoming a high priority as a result of something coming up. Do you understand? So in prioritization in requirement, just as we human beings, we assert importance to things. Prioritization basically is the act of ranking requirements or ranking features or ranking needs of stakeholders, needs of the business to determine their relative importance to stakeholders. Now, the word relative importance is very, very key. What do I mean? If we are building an e-learning solution, right? An e-learning application to let's say we want to build an e-learning solution. We have two sets of stakeholders that need that e-learning. The first group A stakeholders need e-learning for college education. While group B stakeholders need e-learning for maybe primary education, right? You agree with me that the features that we are going to prioritize for these for this e-learning solution for these different stakeholders will be different depending. I mean, as a result of different, the features will have different priorities as a result of the two stakeholders. What do I mean? On the e-learning solution for college education, things like gamification, that means introducing game activities, or um, exciting activities that will, enhance the interest for the students to learn. It will not be of high priority on the college e-learning solution. But for the primary education or primary school e-learning solution, gamification will be of high priority because children would learn easier and faster when they are put in an activity or game or fun mode, right? If you are teaching children A, B, C, it's they can learn it, but when you use a song, right, to rehearse ABC, and you teach them using that song A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they tend to assimilate it better. When you set games for them and you tell them, draw an animal, and you tell them, you put a gaming scenario for them, they tend to participate. So we can prioritize gamification feature on the primary education e-learning solution, but on the college or tertiary education e-learning solution, gamification might not be of priority. Imagine if it is a PhD student e-learning solution. Are you going to start introducing gamification for them, whereby they have a lot of research they need to be doing? They need to consult a lot of libraries, a lot of databases for research purposes and all. So prioritization is basically the act of ranking requirements to determine their relative importance to stakeholders. Because different stakeholders have different priorities, and that is the truth. What a particular stakeholder might prioritize is most likely going to be different from what another stakeholder is going to prioritize. So it is necessary for the BA to be able to sit down and understand what the reason behind, or the justification behind, the prioritization that he or she wants to set, and discuss these metrics or criteria for prioritization with stakeholders in order to get their buy-in. Okay, so there are several factors that affect prioritization for us in business analysis. So many things affect or influence our prioritization, and we are going to go through, I think, about 10 or 11 of them in the next section. Number one of them is benefits. Many people or businesses prioritize what to do based on benefits. You agree with me that you if you are, let's say, you sell gift items, right? You are into selling and delivering gift items, and your priority is to build, you know that the last Valentine period or the last Christmas period, many people couldn't um, make use of your many people couldn't make use of your services because your business was not available, right? You have not your business has not launched or wasn't open for use or for um, trading or business purposes as at then. Now, Valentine period coming up at this moment, you want to prioritize having these things, your business set up and available because of benefit purpose. Let me give another instance as well, something much more relatable for us. So, assuming as a business, we realize that if we should invest in adding an additional feature, or if we should invest our time and resources in building out this requirement, it will help us to generate business value, right? In terms of revenue, in terms of, probably customer acquisition, right? So you let's let me use another example. Let me use Innocent, who is a branch manager. Now, assuming Innocent have been thinking about a brilliant um, account idea, right? That would entice um, couples during this Valentine period. And it feels like, oh, If we can start opening this kind of account, we call it Valentine account. What this account is basically going to do is that during Valentine period, you can overdraw. That's you can buy gifts for your loved ones, right? You can buy gifts or surprise gifts your loved ones by overdrawing funds from this account only during Valentine period, because Valentine is middle of the month. It is not end of the month when people receive salary. Neither is it beginning of the month when people receive salary. It's basically middle of the month of February. So many people could give an excuse that they don't have much funds in their hands to actually show love to their loved ones. At it being Valentine was towards the month end. So we can have a Valentine account whereby people can come and create those accounts in the bank and overdraw those accounts with interest, right? In order to, celebrate Valentine. And at the end of the month, they would pay back the principal plus interest. In that way, it means that things like increased number of accounts openings for innocent would have, he will meet up with target like increasing number of customer acquisition or accounts opened in the bank, things around, increasing loan facilities and also loan repayment or loan servicing, all of those things. So business value or business benefit is there. Because of that, Innocent could prioritize creation of such accounts in his bank so that he could get that benefit. So sometimes prioritization could be driven by benefits, business benefits, customer benefits, right? It could be a business benefit, it could be customer benefits. Another factor that affects our prioritization is penalty. Penalty. If we realize that we would be fined or sanctioned by the regulating authorities, right, or regulatory bodies if we do not implement a particular feature within a timeline, you agree with me that we'll end up prioritizing that particular feature. So let me give an example of my place of work. Last year, was it last year or late 2022? I think late 2022, yeah. Late 2022, when I was preparing my product roadmap, part of what I included in my product roadmap was that I needed us to implement what we call confirmation of payee for our UK customers. So confirmation of payee, just the usual normal thing that we do in our Nigerian banks, whereby when you want to pay somebody, all you have to do is to enter the person's account number, select their bank, and the NIPS payee confirmation system would validate that particular account by producing or displaying or generating the account name. That way you can confirm that this account belongs to this person, right? And you can be sure that you're making your payments to the right source. Now in the UK, all financial institutions don't have this particular service implemented because it is not mandatory. It has not been mandatory, right? It has been a nice to have requirements by the FCA for all financial servicing companies, right? But so let me continue with the story. So I had actually recommended this particular requirement, and that is because I spoke with some of my friends in the UK late 2022, and I realized that many of them who were coming from Nigeria to UK told me the fact that the payments there, most times they make a payment and the thing gets reversed because the account detail is not correct, and they have to call the person again to send the account details, or they have to try the account details over again. And imagine whenever I want to make payments, it's reversing back to you. So they had this challenge, and I felt confirmation of payee would be a way to solve it. So I had to put it in my backlog. But because at that point the business felt there is no need for it, so after review of the product backlog, the decision was to have it taken off the roadmap for 2023. Now, beginning of this year, January this year, the FCA now came up with a circular with a regulation that for every financial institution or for every institution providing financial services in the UK, they will all be given up until Q3 2024 to implement confirmation of service, confirmation of payee on their system. That means by Q3, specifically October 2024, by October 2024, if confirmation of payee is not an existing feature or service that you provide as a financial institution, you would most likely be penalized. And because of that, the requirement or the feature that I put in the backlog that was yanked off for 2023 is now top of what top is like is top priority for us that we're implementing in this Q1. So sometimes, as a result of avoiding penalty, right, we could prioritize a particular requirement. You agree with me that when we were reviewing our roadmap for 2024 in December last year, November, December last year, confirmation of payee was not even priority at that point as of November, December last year. But when the regulation and the circular came this year, we had to put it at the top of everything we are doing this year. So penalty could be a reason or the purpose for which a particular feature or a particular requirement becomes more prioritized than other requirements. Another factor that affects our prioritization is costs. If we weigh the amount of efforts that we are going to put into building a particular requirement and realize that the effort does not commiserate or does not equate the benefits, we might decide that we are going to deprioritize it. Even though it is a high priority work, we might what? Deprioritize it. Another factor that affects prioritization is risk. Risk is another factor that affects our prioritization. As we're all in this class today, you agree with me that we all have differing risk appetite. The level of risk that Obafemi is willing to take could be higher or lower with the level of risk that Innocent or Ikechukwu or even myself is willing to take, which is what we call the risk appetite. As we are here today, if you are told that there's £1 billion, right? There's £1 billion in the compound next to you, and that £1 billion has been given to you by the government. It is your money that has been given to you by the government, but the £1 million is in the next compound, one of the rooms in the next compound. But the only challenge there is that in that next compound, we have a python there, or there's a lion in that next compound. So if you know that you can go to that next compound, bravery, with confidence and being brave, you can go to that next compound and pick your £1 billion. You are all good, but just be aware that there is a very hungry lion in that next compound that has not been fed for over 2 months. Now, at first, we are all going to be afraid, but I will tell you that some of us will want to even give it a thought and say, how can I strategize and go about this, even though there's a lion? £1 billion is not small money. How can I strategize and go for this thing? Right? Well, moreover, all of us, one day everybody's going to die. So if I die making my money, no problem. Instead of me being a poor, wretched person with no one to help me, here is the fund that has been given to me or provided to me by the government. But there's an obstacle, a huge obstacle along the way for me, right? Due to our various risk appetites, some of us might want to give it a shot, while some of us, like me, will say no. It's not. I'm not. It's not worth trying for me, and then step back. Another typical example in the business world today is TransferWise and Lemonade. How many of us use Lemonade, or what's they've rebranded the name to Lemfi? How many of us use Lemonade or Lemfi?
Yeah, I know someone that does, but I don't use
You
it.
know someone that does, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't use it. Why don't you use it? Alba.
They do it on my behalf.
Okay. Do you also use, do you know TransferWise or you've used it before?
No, I don't know transfer wise.
Okay. How about you, Innocent and Ikechukwu? Lemonade, Lemfi, TransferWise, or Wise? Depending on how they call it. Do you guys know it or have you used it?
Uh, I
For
use uh, I use Wise to send money to from where I am in Dublin to anybody in UK.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Okay. Innocent, what about you?
yeah, somebody introduced that lemonade to me while I was in UK in October, but I just feel when I go for fully next month, I will start. I've not used it, but I have the app.
Okay,
I
awesome.
have the app.
Okay, I have both app anyway. So it's an interesting thing. Do you know why? Because of the example I want to give. No, Innocent, you know the CBN regulation that came up, I think a couple of years back, or I think 2 or 3 years back, whereby you can't remit FX directly to Naira, right?
Yes, yes,
Uh-huh. Now, that is awesome. Before that regulation came up, TransferWise was doing FX conversion between foreign currency and Naira. You can convert directly to Naira. You can do that before that regulation came up, right? And then when the regulation came up, TransferWise disabled, even as of today on TransferWise, you can't open a Naira account. They won't offer you Naira. They will show that Naira flag there as type of currencies they offer, but they won't give you account details. And you can't do FX conversions to Naira on TransferWise because of that particular regulation. So they disabled that. They were not willing to take the risk because there's a lot of penalty involved, right? But Lemonade today, they don't care. They are willing to take that risk because they know that the business value or the business benefit outweighs the risk. If the risks that CBN, assuming the risks that CBN is going to impose or apply for every offender could be like maybe $50 million, and Lemonade sees that they will be making over $500 million from this. They felt okay, is what's the risk? Highest if they fine us or sanction us, we pay the fine. The fine is just like 10% of what we're making. Because Lemonade, right from time, have been converting FX, especially the British pounds, to Naira in their own on their own rates, not even with CBN rates. They'll be using the black market or what we call the parallel market rates to convert FX to Naira. And they've been catching out since they have launched. But TransferWise, they are not willing to take that risk of being sanctioned. In short, if you go on TransferWise and you try to convert Naira to, I mean, GBP to Naira, you will see that they'll give you an information, a red alert that the CBN, blah, 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 does not support this. And because of that, they don't support this particular transaction because of the CBN, whatever. They will tell you point and clear. And that's because they want to be compliant. They don't want to risk being non-compliant. So sometimes risks could be a reason for which requirements ascertain different level of prioritization. Another one is dependencies. When implementing A, right? When implementing A is dependent on completing C. Assuming you have A, B, C, and D. Even though we realize that A has the highest business benefits, A will give us both stakeholder benefit and user benefit, customer benefit, and business benefit. It gives the best user experience. It is cheaper. It is whatever. By the time we say, okay, let us go and do A, and we realize that we can't actually do A or start A if we have not completed C or D. Because of that dependency, we will have to prioritize doing C before we do A. So sometimes dependency could be the reason for which we prioritize a particular requirement. Another factor is timing consideration. Like I've said, all of these things kind of intertwine with each other, one way or the other. If you realize that we need to actually launch in the in the market today, right? Um, and we are not considering the best time to launch, then we'll be doing ourselves a displeasure, right? Another example in terms of timing being a factor for requirements. If you are an e-commerce platform that um, you you provide service, but your platform has been unstable, there's a lot of instability on your platform. What I mean by instability is that someone could select an item, go to checkout, and try to make and place an order, and the order just terminates. Or people try to select an item, and maybe after selecting the item, they come back the next time to check for that item. That item no longer there, no history of that item. Or it could be that when people try to access your platform, your service is not is unavailable, and there's a lot of error people are getting, which is platform instability. This period in time that we are in a Valentine celebration, you know that this is a time that a lot of gifting and buying things online will be going on. And it will be of priority for businesses to make sure that they make their platform stable before this particular time. Another example is during November period where we have Black Friday sales, which according to statistics is when most of these e-commerce businesses tend to sell the most, right? You agree with me that as a business, you prioritize making your platform stable, efficient, effective before that time of the Black Friday. So you try to raise against time so that you have that ready before the time for reaping the benefits or before the time passes. Because if you end up during Black Friday, ultra Black Friday period season, your system was always, your platform is always down, is unstable. People will pay for things, they will debit them, but your system does not capture it that they've paid for those things. So many things. You're going to lose a lot of money. You're going to lose customers eventually. And after the Black Friday season, you now say, okay, let me now fix this thing since Black Friday have ended. You might end up not being able to, you'll be considered to not be a wise business analyst who have thought ahead of time on prioritizing things as a respect of time. The next one is stability, like I mentioned. Sometimes we could prioritize based on stability. If you realize that our system or our services or our platforms are not stable, we can prioritize it because if the platform is not stable, it means that we are going to lose revenue, we would also lose our customers, and we might lose data. So we'll be on the losing end. And because of platform stability, we might need to what? Prioritize that piece of work over every other thing we do. The last one is regulatory compliance, right? There are some requirements that even as BAs, when we are writing specification for solutions, we have to prioritize those requirements. Example is regulatory compliance requirements, things like privacy notice, terms and conditions, account terms, and whatever. We need to prioritize those requirements being implemented on our systems, irrespective of the fact that even though we need to add awesome or wonderful features on our system. That takes us to techniques of prioritization or prioritization techniques. But if you have any question on factors that influence prioritization, please do let me know, then I'll respond. Do you have any question on factors that affect prioritization?
No, for me.
All right. If so, let's go over to techniques of prioritization. So in the industry today, we have different ways, different techniques that we use in prioritizing requirements. One of the most recent one, it will surprise you. One of the most recent one is the RICE technique. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. RICE technique, RICE. right? RICE is a technique that basically is being used in product management, right? In prioritizing requirements. We use this in product management to prioritize requirements, and it comprises things like reach, things like sorry, I kind of forgotten now. Oh, that's gone off my mind. So in the RICE technique, I think R stands for reach, right? Y I should be impact. Yeah. R is reach, Y is impact, C is confidence, and E is effort. So we look at if these requirements that is in product management now, if this requirement or this feature would help us to have a wider reach of users, right? We consider it. We also look at the impact it will have on the business if it is being implemented, the impact it will have on our user experience as well for our customers. Then we look at what confidence are we going to, will our users, is it going to add to confidence of the products? I mean, confidence from the part of the users on the products and what have you. And then we consider the effort with which it will take us to actually build out that feature. These are some of the things we consider when we are trying to prioritize the requirements in product management. But in business analysis, you can also use the RISE technique. But what we largely use are three main techniques. Three type of techniques are largely being introduced in business analysis. Number one is the Moscow technique. Number two is the Eisenhower decision metrics, right? And number three is the time boxing or time box technique. We're going to take a look at these three techniques. So Moscow, Eisenhower, and time box, right? Starting with Moscow, just as the spelling is. So the letter M is capitalized, S and C are capitalized, and W is capitalized. And that's what forms the Moscow technique, which is the must have, should have, could have, and won't have, right? Must have features or requirements, should have, could have, and won't have. Let's take a look at what each means. For must have, these are basically requirements that must be included before the product can be launched. We must include this requirement before we consider launching the product. These requirements are considered must have requirements. Requirements that fall under should have. Sorry, a minute, please. Okay, so for requirements that we consider should have, these are basically requirements or features that are not critical for launch. What this means is that if we don't have them ready yet, okay, if we don't have them available yet while we are trying to launch our MVP, minimum viable products, you're not going to break our neck. But they are also considered important to the customer, right? They are not critical to have, but they're also considered important to our customers. Let me give an instance here. If you are buying something online, right? If you are building an e-commerce software, you will agree with me that building a payment platform for ourselves is not critical for us to go live. We can actually leverage other third-party vendors to help us process our payments, like PayPal, or make use of MasterCard or Visa to help process our payment, or InterSwitch to help process our payment. We don't necessarily have to build our own payment processing service to process our payments when we are building an e-commerce solution, right? So because of scenarios like that, things like implementing a payment processor might not be high priority for us, right? It might just be it might not be a must-have requirement for us. Could be a should-have. That's because payment processing is important to our customers, right? So things that are not critical for go live, like MVPs, but they are considered important. These are the things that we put in our should have requirements list. Then we have the could have. For the could have, what we are basically saying that these are features that are not critical for the launch of our MVP, right? But they are considered to be delightful to our stakeholders. They delight them, they give an awesome experience to our stakeholders, right? For instance, WhatsApp is a very interesting product, right? For WhatsApp, when WhatsApp first started, all they had was just their must-have feature. That must-have feature was ability to send chats. Even when WhatsApp started, and I'm not sure if they launched with creating of group chats, ability for you to see your contacts who are on WhatsApp and chat with them directly. This was the must-have requirement or features that WhatsApp launched with. But along the line, they began to bring other should-have requirements like um, making voice call, creating group chat, sending broadcast messages. You know, this is became should-have requirements. This is where should have requirements that they now have to what implement later, because these requirements were not critical for them to launch at first, but it was important for users to have these requirements. And then at the point when they were launching, things like sharing your status was considered as a could have requirement because it's something that would delight the user, right? Things like changing the wallpaper of your WhatsApp chat profile were like could have requirement because there are things that could delight their users. Not necessarily that if users can change their wallpaper, their chat wallpaper from the first time that WhatsApp launched, I think that was in 2009 or 2008, that people will not end up using WhatsApp then. So the last one is the won't have requirements. The won't have requirements are considered as requirements that are not critical, right? But they've been requested, and we realize that we might end up using spending a lot of effort building them, and they have no immediate value. In the sense that we'll spend a lot of effort to build them, but there's no immediate value for them, right? Even in the shortest time frame, there's no immediate value. Because of that, we don't implement those features. We consider them to be won't have. That doesn't mean that probably a year from today or 2 years from today, those features will not become a must-have priority anymore. But for the moment, we consider them as a won't have because there is no immediate business benefits or there's no looming penalty or risks or whatever for us to take. Okay. Now, remember when I was starting the class, I mentioned the fact that priorities change at every point in time. Something that had been considered as a could have today could become a must have next week, depending on so many factors that I mentioned earlier on. Depending on so many factors, something that we consider to be a could have could become a must have. And something that we consider to be a must have could become a won't have, depending on several factors like I highlighted in the first section. Now, the next technique is the Eisenhower decision matrix. For the Eisenhower decision matrix, we look at priority from the level of importance and urgency, right? From level of importance and urgency. It means that if the requirement is very important and very urgent, then we give it a high priority. If it's very important and very urgent, we give it a high priority. If it is very important and it is not so urgent, like it is 50% urgency, but very important, right? It's very important, but 50% urgency, we'll give it a medium priority. Very important, 50% urgency, medium priority. Now, if it is very urgent, like 100% urgent, but like 50% priority, we give it low priority. Sorry, 50% importance, we give it low priority. So it's very, very urgent, but 50% importance, we give it low priority. And on the other hand, if it is less than 50% urgent and less than 50% importance, we give it what? Lowest priority. So things like that, we call them, we say that we will say we'll basically do them what? Later. So we'll do them what? Later. And they are the things we consider won't have requirements as against what we have in the Moscow technique. Now, the interesting thing about Eisenhower decision matrix is that the Eisenhower decision matrix is popularly used. It's across so many requirement of project management tools like Jira. Jira uses Eisenhower decision matrix in prioritization. Same with Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps uses Eisenhower decision matrix in prioritizing requirements, right? So on Azure DevOps uses the numbering scale of Eisenhower decision matrix, while Jira uses the priority, highest priority, medium priority, low priority, and lowest priority scale for Eisenhower decision matrix. The last technique we'll be looking at is the time boxing. The time boxing. Now, for time boxing technique, there are basically three approaches. And we use the time boxing technique when we are time box or we are in a time box project. By time box project means that we have a very tight deadline to meet. Very, very tight deadline. And nobody cares whether we build a world-class product or solution. All everybody is concerned about is that you must not go beyond this timeline. So we have a very tight schedule that we need to meet. Okay. And in such situations, we use the time boxing technique because that's where it comes handy. And there are three approaches to time boxing. Number one is all in. Number two is all out. And number three is selective. So it could be all in, all out, or selective. Now let me explain these three approaches. For the all in, what we're basically doing is that we include all of the requirements that are necessary for the solution. We give them the same priority. We consider all of them to be high priority. So we consider all the requirements that we have gotten from stakeholders to be highest priority. By the time we give all of them highest priority, then we begin to remove or postpone or deprioritize those requirements that if we should include them, they will make us to miss our deadline. Are you following me now? So let's assume we are giving 20 requirements, and if we want to use the all-in technique for that time boxing, we'll consider all the whole 20 to be high priority. By the time we've considered all of them to be high priority, then out of this 20, we'll begin to say, okay, of these 20 requirements, we can't implement everything. So which of these requirements in these 20 that if we should start implementing them, we might end up not meeting up with our tight deadline. We remove those requirements or we deprioritize them. That is the all-in approach in time boxing. The all-out approach in time boxing is when we are given that 20 requirements and then we consider all the whole 20 requirements to be of low priority. That means we say they are not all important, right? Or they are all low priority. By the time we allow them to be all low priority, then we begin to decide of these 20 low priority requirements, which of them do we need to prioritize and implement so that we can meet up with our timeline. So in all in, everything is considered as high priority, as things that we need to do. And then we begin to remove the ones that do them, we are going to miss our timelines. But in all out, which is the reverse, we consider everything as not important or not priority. Then we begin to say, of all these things that are not priority, which ones can we pick and prioritize them, which by the time we do them, we'll be able to meet up with our schedule or meet up with our timeline. That is it all out. Then the last one is the selective. For the selective technique, what we do there is that we gather all the requirements, we give them varying priorities, high priority, medium priority, low priority. We all know that. And then, even though they have different level of priority, we begin to say, even though this one is medium priority, let us remove it because if you are to do this medium priority work, we might not meet our timeline. Let's include this low priority work and do it with a high priority work so that we can meet up with our deadline. So in the selective, we basically identify the high priority requirements, and then we begin to add and remove between the medium and the low priority. We begin to exchange between medium and low priority and decide which of them should we include in order for us to meet up with our timeline. That takes us to documentation format, which is the last part of today's class. I don't know if you have any question.
In the prioritization, uh, uh, is uh, is there a particular time that you have to use time boxing or Moscow, or is it that maybe, for example, if um before if I want the stakeholder to prioritize requirement, can I use at what point can I use it? Is it during my requirement analysis or during my discussion with the stakeholder, or when I get to delivery, when I'm now discussing with, I know most time in delivery, I always hear Moscow, 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 Moscow. But is there a particular time that this prioritization will fit best as a business analyst?
Okay, thanks for that question. Now, in terms of prioritization and when you should do it, there are different times that you consider prioritization. And prioritization, just like elicitation, is an ongoing work for you as a BA. Why? Because things change, right? Now, before you even go ahead to start implementing, that before you even present the work to stakeholders, you need to prioritize the work, you need to prioritize the requirements and run it through or run it by your stakeholders, your business stakeholders, so that from the business standpoint, is it in priority for the business? Is it priority to stakeholders? Do you follow? So you must have prioritized your requirements, and you could have a workshop, or if it is just one stakeholder, maybe a domain subject matter expert or a client, you can have an interview or a workshop with them, and everybody discusses the priority that you have assigned to this requirement. And for each one, you give a reason why you explain to them why you are giving that a high priority or low priority, or why you're considering that a must have and this other one a should have. Do you understand? By the time you've been able to align with stakeholders on a priority, okay, then you come to engineering for delivery. Even though something is high priority from what business stakeholder has given, for business stakeholder, what they understand is that we need this thing to be done, to be implemented. But by the time you come to engineering, I realize that engineering will tell you that for us to do this thing, it will be difficult because there's a lot of dependencies we have technology-wise to implement this. And because of those dependencies, we would have to prioritize implementing those things that will allow us to overcome the dependencies before we implement this. So the priority could change at the delivery level. It is now your responsibility as a PA to also communicate this change in priority to your business stakeholders as well. That is why communication is very, very important as BA. So you could prioritize something as something could be of high priority, top of mind, but you come to engineering tell you that for us to implement this, we might need to increase our server capacity. Do you understand? And we have to prioritize increasing server capacity before even implementing this. That means server capacity could become the highest priority above that particular thing that you've actually discussed. Now, you don't keep the other stakeholders in the dark because they'll keep on asking you, How come this is not ready? How come it's not ready? You need to make sure you what communicate with them. Now, what I do um, as a product manager, even as a PA back then, now is that whenever I'm trying to go into a new feature or I'm trying to build something newly, even in those business stakeholder conversations, I will bring in the head of engineering or someone they call the CTO, Chief Technology Officer, or the Director of Engineering. I'll bring that person into the conversation so that at that high level conversation where we are trying to prioritize or ascertain priority of things, that person could help provide input or guide if there are going to be anything or any dependencies that might change the priority level of any item we are discussing at that point. So it depends on how you want to do it, but this is where I do my own. Like today now, if I'm having a conversation with a vendor on a new integration we want to do, I'll bring in my engineering guys, even when we've not discussed commercials yet. I'll bring in my engineering guys. Either I bring the head of engineering or I bring the engineering lead. I bring those guys in. I bring the country manager into the meeting as well. And we discuss all of those things at once. The essence is for me to manage all of those back and forth. You tell the business that, okay, we've agreed to get this thing done in 3 months. And then after you finish your documentation and you have series of refinements with engineering, maybe after 2 or 3 weeks, engineer tell you that this thing can be done in 3 months because we need to first implement something in the next 2 months before actually doing it. And then you have to start going back to business. Business will say, oh, we've already put this in our business queue for the month, blah, 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 blah. You know, a lot of back and forth. So I try to manage that conversation at the beginning.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you
You're
so much.
welcome. Any other question?
No question for me.
No, no
All
for
right.
me.
Thanks, Ikechukwu. And in a sense, ideally, to be honest with you guys, prioritization is a very tricky thing. Very tricky. But the fact is that when you sit to analyze and ascertain priorities to requirements, make sure that for you to be able to convince stakeholders, you have a justification for it. If you are telling them that out of these 5 features that we need to implement in 2024, let's only implement these 3. You need to give them the reason. For instance, my place of work, there's 3 key factors or criteria that we consider for prioritization, right? Number one top of it is business value, that is business benefits. Number 2 is regulatory compliance. And then number 3 is customer experience or user experience, right? Because we are largely focused on the UK market, and the UK market is a highly regulated market. So business value and regulatory compliance come first before even user experience for us. So if you are trying, that's why if I want to implement any feature today, no matter how innovative that feature is, I will always first have a meeting with my compliance managers, have a meeting with the country manager in UK, the compliance manager in UK. We discuss. And after discussing, I'll tell them, these are the things I want to do. Madam Compliance Manager, from the UK regulatory framework and all of that, how does this comply? Since you are the compliance specialist. Country Manager, based on target for this year, I know what the target is and this will help us achieve it. What do you think? Everybody begins to add their own view. If they say, oh, based on compliance, there's other regulations there's a regulation that we need to do this thing this month. And because of that, if you are doing this new feature, we can't do this thing this month. So we need to do that regulatory whatever. So, okay, fine. I'll move this thing to further maybe 3 months time. Let's complete this regulatory compliance stuff, right? Unlike what I used to do about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whereby if I want to build any feature, I'll just ideate it, have the product design, we design it, we get customer feedback, then I write out the requirements, draw the process flows, take it to engineering team, discuss it with engineering. Engineering will be so excited about it. They say, wow, this is very nice. And then I was okay, but let's just get business sign off before we start. And then no trying to be agile. And then I take it to business and the business say, or compliance say, sorry, this thing, if you should do it, then they'll come and arrest all of us. And the whole thing will just demoralize the whole effort of work I've been doing for over a month or plus, right? So you just have to find what works best for you, right? If you know that there are some roadblocks you need to, or some hurdles you need to climb for you to, confirm this whole prioritization of what needs to be done, right? You find a way to work around it. And when you join a company newly, especially as a BA or as a product person, try to understand how what framework or what criteria do they use in prioritizing things. That will also help you. Because when I first joined this my current place of work, I was prioritizing based on user experience. But they bust my bubble and say, no, what is user experience? No, we want compliance first. It has to be first compliant for us because of the UK market. And it has to be business benefit before user experience. So my very first set of features that I prepared in my product roadmap were more of awesome and wonderful features that will help customers to, use our product more and acquire more customers to use our product. But I needed to push all of those things behind and make sure we start implementing those things that will make us to be compliant to FCA. Yeah. Okay. So for requirements attributes, we basically discussed requirement attributes when we were talking about user story. I made mention of invest. If you can remember where I said your requirements should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. So if you want to get full detail on that, you can try and listen back to the user story class and get full detail on the invest. I wouldn't want us to waste our time on that. So let's just go straight to documentation formats. We've been discussing about several formats of documentation, right, on this class. And we've mentioned something like BRD, right? Also FRD. I don't know if anyone have prepared a BRD or FRD before. Anyone amongst us, maybe Obafemi, since you've done something related to business analysis in the past, or Ikechukwu. I know Ikechukwu mentioned that he has drawn a use case diagram, so you've done something related to business analysis in the past. So have you done a BRD or FRD before? Have you prepared one?
Yeah, I'll say what I've done is just user stories. I've not really documented PRD or fully documented FRD.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How about Ikechukwu or Innocent?
Not really. I wasn't really involved when they were drafting out the BRD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Innocent, have you approved any BRD?
Not really. I think the other time we worked on when we were doing our Scrum, the product owner was one that do that part of the work when we were doing our project.
Okay. Awesome.
No.
All right. So BRD basically, right, is written for us to describe the requirement of a business process or the requirement of a system. That is why we write a BRD, to describe the business, stakeholder, and solution requirement on a high level. That's why we call it a BRD. It helps to specify what the system must do in order to fulfill the requirements of the business or the requirement of stakeholders. That is what BRD helps us to attain. FRD, on the other hand, helps us to define how the system would accomplish it. So BRD defines what the system would do, help us to understand what it is. Everybody knows this is what the system is going to do. But in our FRD, that is where we explain how the system will do it by outlining the functionalities, the features that the system would have. And as I've always kept mentioning, the FRD is more detailed than the BRD. It is more granular than the BRD, and it is more technical than the BRD. Another documentation that back then as BAs, I used to prepare them, but we are no longer being required to prepare them now is the SRS, Software Requirement Specification. I've not really been mentioning this in class, and that's because BAs are no longer required to prepare SRS because we have solution architects who do that, right? So the SRS is a description of the understanding of an organization for what its potential client or customers will require. Let me give an instance. If Uptrust Digital wants to, you know, build a digital payment platform for Zenith Bank today, the SRS document will be prepared even before the BRD and FRD is being prepared. And that is the SRS document is for where we need to consider all of the technological infrastructure, the requirement of all the technological infrastructure that Zenith Bank has, and how the online platform or online banking platform that we are going to build, how it's going to interact, the requirements in terms of how they're going to relate, how they're going to complement each other. We prepare that in the SRS. So it's I won't call it, it is partly business and partly technical, right? Because you also explain what the business objectives and all of that is. Then you go deeper in technicalities. You are drawing more of architectures in your SRS. So you see things, you see more of architecture, system architecture in your SRS, right? But today the business analyst is no longer required to prepare it. People that prepare that today for us now is the solution architect. Just like today, it's no longer the job of the business analyst to be designing mock-ups. It's the product designer that does that today, right? So all of these things came as a result of democratization of the business analysis role. So the SRS states in precise and explicit language all the functions and capabilities, as well as the constraints by which the software must abide in. It is like a blueprint for completing the project. The blueprint for completing the project. Now let's take a look at BRD and FRD templates and also a sample BRD and FRD. Then we end the class. So I'll start with the template of a BRD. Can you guys see my screen? Is this clear enough, or I should expand it? I should zoom in.
Zoom it out a bit.
Is it time? Is it? Should I zoom in?
Yes, zoom, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
It's tiny.
All right. How about now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. So we have the title page where you say the name of the project, who is being prepared for, the logo of the client, prepared by who, the dates, and then we have the preamble page where you talk about the information of the document, who owns the documents, right? What are you referencing, or who are you referencing in preparing this documentation? The history, the revision history. So if this is version 1, it will be version 0.1. That means this is the recent current version. If we have a new version and version comes up, let's say you prepared your BRD and the version is 0.1, then you send it to stakeholders for them to review and give inputs or make feedback, give feedback. Then they give feedback and inputs, and you realize that you need to make changes to the initial document, right? You would make those changes, then you create a new row, and under version you have 0.2. Details, you explain the changes you made. Author, the person that made the change, and the signature. Then we have the document approval, and that's because your BRD and FRD can help you to seek formal approvals in the form of signature, sign off for your documentation. So if we have someone that needs to approve this, the name of the person, the designation of the person, the signature of the person, and the day the person approved it, right? Then we have the content page, and then we have the document itself. So we have introduction, the purpose of the document, which is what is the aim of the document. You define or you describe the solution briefly. Then you also highlight the business or project objectives where necessary. The audience for the BRD, so ideally the audience for the BRD is always the business team, not the technical team, right? The solution scope, what is the scope of the project? If there's a current way that that particular process is being done. Let's say, for instance, IIBA e-voting. Assuming if IIBA only does their election manually at the moment and they need the e-voting to digitize or automate the election process. So we are going to, in this current situation, or as is, would describe the current way by which IIBA and IIBA organize their elections, right? Then the envision, which is it to be, will describe how the digitized or automated process would look like. Okay. Then out of scope, you basically highlight items that you consider to be out of scope. We have the key indicators section where you list out the critical success factors for the project and also for the solution, and how will these factors be measured. Okay. Then we have process ownership. Who owns this process that you're about to digitize or automate, right? For instance, the IIBA process, e-voting election process will be owned by the EMC, as the Election Monitoring Committee, because they're the one that, manage election in IIBA. So the process is owned by them. Then key controls. How are we going to control quality or assure quality in the course of this particular implementation? Then we have section 6, where we talk about stakeholder requirements, which is a requirement of stakeholders. You first by listing out all the users and their functions on the system. Then you list out the high level requirements. Sorry, I put this here. The high level requirements, you describe the high level requirements and the priority you are assigning to it. If it is high priority or low priority or medium priority, you mention it here. So this is where stakeholders will decide and say, oh, if this requirement 001 that you give medium priority, please can it be high priority, because we actually need it to be one of the topmost things that you do before any other thing. So you list out your requirement, then you attach or insert your high-level process description. That is your cross-functional flowchart. Your high-level cross-functional flowchart, you insert it here. Then if there are any risks, maybe project risk, business risks, right, or technology risks that you have identified. Sorry, someone's mic is on. Can you guys help me mute? If there are any risks that you've identified, you outline the risks here. If there are any assumptions that you want to make, probably you want to assume that the IIBA EMC team would provide the product team with all the necessary data and artifacts that are needed to configure the system. So you can make those assumptions, right? Then if there are any dependencies, probably if you need to get a license before the solution can be live, and you see that you consider that licensing as a dependency to going live, you state those dependencies here. Okay, so this is a template BRD, business requirement document. Let's look at a sample BRD. So I prepared a sample BRD for the e-voting solution. So we have the e-voting solution as a title. We have the document owner. We have document reference, initial draft, second version of the draft. We have the approval, who will be approving the document, the project sponsor. Then we have the table of contents, and then we have the main document itself. Now, under introduction, we have the document purpose. So the purpose of this requirement document is to provide the technical team, the advisors, technical partners, business, and also vendors a detailed description of the IIBA e-voting solution to be deployed. This document also establishes the functional. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake here. It should have been here. To stop here. Oh, sorry. Let me do this here. Okay. Yeah. So the solution definition or description, you define what the solution is about. If it's going to be a portal or a web application, or it's going to be a mobile application, you explain it, how people are going to access it. You also explain the business objectives. The solution should be user friendly. Solution should have 99% of data credibility. It should be secured and not prone to cyber attack. Solution should be able to store 100% of election data securely. Intended audience is the IIBA EMC team. Then the current situation is that IIBA currently conduct the elections manually. So the election process is purely manual, which involves all of this. You explained, I explained that. Then the envisioned process is that the future state of the IIB election will be digitized with the use of technology to build a secured portal that will allow eligible voters to log into the e-voting system and cast their votes. Votes will be submitted, and the votes submitted will be captured and stored electronically on the e-voting solution database, and the election will be opened electronically by the AMC through a predefined purpose and closed. This should be closed. Guess and closed electronically as well. The solution will collate results of the election and publish it automatically upon closure of the election activity. Now, the scope, things that are considered in scope: development of an e-voting portal, generation of login credentials, managing of votes, security of portal using this, management of system, configuration of positions, and authentication of eligible voters. These are the things that are in scope for this project. And I want to have to mention that any other item that is not listed above, that is not listed as part of the scope requirements, are considered to be out of scope. For process attributes, critical success factor, number one is that the e-voting must be accessible over the web to allow eligible voters participate in the election. How we are going to measure the performance is that the solution will be hosted on a secure domain online, and that when users try to access the URL, that it will be reachable without any issues or error encountered. Only eligible voters are allowed to should be allowed to log in. That is a critical success factor. They don't want any other member logging in with their membership ID. They only want those that they consider to be eligible to vote to log in. So how we are going to measure that is that this e-voting will successfully authenticate only valid and authorized users. And these valid and authorized users are eligible voters that their data has been uploaded on the system, right? Then we have the one on security and other critical success factors as well. The section 3 is the process ownership, which is owned by the IBA EMC team. Key controls is that the application will go through internal quality assurance processes, and the user acceptance test will be conducted prior to the go live of the solution. The requirement of the stakeholders, so we have 3 users: super admin, EMC, and eligible voter. These are the functions of the super admin. These are the functions of eligible EMC, and these are the functions of eligible voter. Now, the key features of the e-voting solution are going to be the key, or should I say major features of the e-voting solution, or can call them modules. Then high-level requirements. HLR 001, describe what it is, then its priority. HLR 002, eligible voters should be able to log in to the e-voting system with their membership ID and password. What is a priority? System should be able to log out eligible voters who are not active on the system, and that has a medium priority. So you list out all the high-level requirements and their own respective priority. Okay. It could be at the point of you doing a walkthrough for stakeholders that people can align on this paradigm and say, this one that you put system session management as medium. Please, can you put it as high priority or can you make it low priority? You're not so concerned about session management. Can you make it low priority? You ask them why. You don't just take anything for that. They tell you make low priority. Don't just say, okay, I'll make it low priority. No. You ask them, why do you think or why do you want it to be low priority? And they need to give you a substantial reason as well. You understand? So you prioritize and then you attach the high level process diagram and then the risks, you outline the project risks or business risks, the assumptions, you also state, I stated the assumptions here, and then the dependencies that are there. So one of the dependencies is that successful auditing of the e-voting solution by auditors. If the e-voting was not well audited before election, it means that election cannot start. So that is a huge dependency. That is it for BRD. Before I go to FRD, do you have any question? Or is BRD clear to us? I know many of us must have been itching to see a BRD or FRD template and sample.
Just want to see what the FRD would also contain. So I can-
Okay. All right, no problem. So this is the
Please,
FRD template.
please, this
Yeah.
template, you make it available for us, right?
Of course, I'll make it available for you guys. It's going to be there for you. The struggles that I had, you guys are not going to have it. Because when I finished, nobody shared every template. I had to, based on I came up with this template based on series of work I've done over the years for different organizations, different clients. Then I came up with a standard template. Do you understand? So all you need is just to plug and play and use it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll share the template. The template for the BRD and the template for the FRD, I'll share with you guys. It's explanatory. That's why I went ahead to put all of these explanatory things there. You understand? So when doing it, you know what this should be. Same thing with here. I give all of this explanation. So BRD and FRD is almost the same thing in terms of the preamble. We have the revision, approvals, table of content. Then we have the document purpose, introduction. You also describe the solution and the scope of the solution. Your success criteria, you also mention them, right? Then section 3 is about the system user groups, right? The users of the system. What are their functions and what modules they will have access to? The assumptions and risks, you also state them. Then section 5, you go to the functional requirements. I included this context diagram because you might be required to draw it, you may not be required, but today, as of today, most BAs don't draw context diagram. It is part of what comes in your SRS, and we have solution architects that draw them, right? So, but you have your use case diagram that is a must. Then you have your use case specifications for each of the use cases. Then you have your flow diagram, your cross-functional flow chart for each of these use cases. So if this is login, you have flow chart, cross-functional flow chart for login. If this is reset password, you have cross-functional flow chart for reset password. If this is cast vote, you have cross-functional flow chart for cast vote. For all of them, then you have your non-functional requirements. You list out all your non-functional requirements and describe them. This is the template for FRD. Now, a sample FRD is this. Sorry. You have the usual preamble pages, right? Then we have the table of contents. Then we have the introduction where you also introduce. And the essence of this is that the engineering team needs to also understand what the solution is about. It's good for them to share, to be part of what is being built, to have to relate to what is being, to connect to what they're building. So you introduce the solution to them, let them know the purpose of this document as well, describe the solution to them as well, then make them aware of the objectives that the business is trying to achieve. It is very important because they might feel maybe what they are building is not important to the business. They might feel maybe it's just my job to do this thing. It has no value, it has no impact. But they need to realize that what they are doing has an overarching impact on the business. So, what is the business objectives or project objectives? Then the scope as well. If there are any current processes, you let them know. If then what the digital process will be. You know, the first few sections are almost identical with what we have in your BRD. But as you now go down, that things will begin to become much more technical. So in your stakeholder requirements, you basically list out the requirements, the way you gather them, right? Then you now have your use case diagram, which you will now draw and attach. Okay. Then you have your use case specification, which goes more technical on each functionality. For every one of them, you have your process diagram. For every one of them, you keep on going. If you have 20 functionalities, you write those 20 use case specifications along with each of them. You draw a process model, a process diagram, which is a cross-functional flowchart in this instance. Then after drawing and attaching, after writing all your specifications, you state your project dependencies and assumptions, then your non-functional flowchart. So I just put these ones on communication and security, right? But there are several non-functional requirements that you can include, like performance, like usability, and whatever. So you include all of your non-functional requirements that are needed. So that is a sample FRD. Do you have any question?
Yeah, for the question I would like to ask is,
Yeah.
I remember when I think you said when in Agile,
Mm-hmm.
you said it's okay for us to write FRD as well.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there's one thing I want to clarify. I've been in a project and they're like documents the apart from writing the user story, they're like go to conference and document it. And I'm like, I've written something about this about this feature, and you want me to go to conference to document again. What am I documenting? So that's why I'm like, is the documentation they always require in conference different from, is that the FRD or is it different from user story?
Okay. Thanks for that question. So first, you could have asked them what they want you to document. One, let the person specify. But let me help to give more context. Now, Confluence and Jira are both services provided by Atlassian, right? Jira helps us in managing our user stories, managing the project and all of that. But Confluence helps in managing documents. Do you understand? So you can document the FRD and upload it on Confluence. Do you follow? You can document the FRD and then upload it on Confluence.
Okay.
So I'm guessing it's the FRD they want you to put on Confluence. Even though you're writing, remember, now, for FRD, if you are doing Agile, you don't use your FRD in Agile. You don't use it in the delivery phase of Agile. You use your user story in the delivery phase of Agile. But FRD is a mandatory documentation that is necessary for every system. Do you understand now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, another difference between an Agile organization and a waterfall organization is this. If it were to be waterfall, they would have told you guys to first of all do your FRD and BRD and get a sign up. Do you understand? From a stakeholder before you even go ahead to write your user story. But if it is Agile, we might even go ahead and be writing user story. I've never even written BRD or FRD. But that does not mean that you don't need to write them. The essence is that we don't need to pass that hurdle before we start implementing.
Oh, okay.
Do you follow now?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Let me give you an instance. So there's this product that I implemented in my place of now in our place last year, which I'm implementing other parts of it, the USD account. When I started implementing USD accounts last year, the product paper, so in products, we have product paper or products requirement documentation. Then we have the user stories you write. You don't do FRD or BRD in products. You only do PRD or product paper. Then you have your user stories you write for your implementation. So the product paper, as I speak with you guys today, the product paper has not been approved by the board, but the product is live. Do you understand? So actually, we are trying to be as fast as possible. Of course, everybody knows that we need that product to be on the system, to be on our platform. But we've not approved the product paper, but it's live. I've sent money, I've sent dollars to my account. I've withdrawn dollars from my account. Same thing with other people. Do you understand? But if it was to be waterfall, if the company is purely waterfall, we can't even start that USD product until the board has approved the product paper. Are you following me now? So the whole thing is, as a BA, your FRD, your BRD, you can't run away from documenting them. Do you get? You need to make sure you have all of that available.
Okay. So if I'm writing, if it's like they want to, let's say they want to introduce another feature now for a particular
Yeah,
product. So for me now, what I need to do is,
you can update the FRD.
okay, for that
If it is
particular.
yes, if it is just one, let's say for instance, now it is one product that we are working on, right? And maybe a new feature needs to come on that product. You update the FRD. So you create a new version of that FRD. It's not like you will document a new FRD, except it's a different product.
Okay.
Let me give an instance now. So as we have WhatsApp, assuming tomorrow WhatsApp want to add conference call as part of their features, all you have to do is to update the FRD with that conference call feature. But if tomorrow Meta wants to build a different product that is not WhatsApp, then you have to prepare a new BRD for that one. So you can always update your FRDs. You can update your BRDs as required.
So what about Epic? So what would be the documentation for
So
Epic?
Epic will be in your Jira. I thought I showed you guys how an Epic looks like the other time.
Yes, yes, yes.
Let me show you. Let me share my screen so you get to see. Um, let me share my entire screen. So just let me know when you can see my screen, okay?
Yes.
So this is a user story that we wrote in class, I think last week or a couple of weeks back. You see this add epic. That's because I've not created epic for this user story. So epics go with user story. I can create this epic. Do you understand? By coming to, let's say I'll come here, click on create. Instead of creating a user story, I'll assign it as epic. Do you understand? And maybe I can give this epic title of onboarding. Then I can describe. This epic explains how an eligible voter will be able to onboard on the e-voting solution with their credentials. I just give like a description of this epic. Basically, I create it so that the epic is being created, right? Now I can come on this place and I'm using a free version. This is not a paid version. I can go to that particular epic, right? Let me go to backlog. Filter by epics. Sorry. Let me go back here. Let me just get an epic. So this is the epic. So this is the epic itself, right? I can now add that user story to it. You see, add a child is a user story. So a child is a user story to an epic. So you see that story here. That story is Dex 2 or what they call it. So you say choose an existing issue. Let me choose an existing one. So this is the one. So I've added it. So this user story is now part of this epic.
Yeah.
Do you
So
follow now?
yes. So what I will put in the epic is quite different from the FRD.
Yes.
the
So
BRD.
now the epic, you can consider epic as a module. Remember that when we looked at our FRD, let me. Where did I pause? It's an FRD or BRD? I think it should be in the BRD. Sorry.
BRD.
Yeah. So you see these key features. You can consider them as modules on the system. So the epic, so we have an epic called system configuration. I'll have user stories for it. Do you understand? We have an epic for user management. One of the user stories for this will be to create user. Another user story will be to edit user. Do you understand? But the epic is user management. So this epic allows admin to be able to manage user account access or users on the e-voting solution. So it will have this, then it can have user stories like create user, edit user, delete user, or disable user. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So epics go with user stories. Do you understand? They go with user stories. And you have them in your Jira, not on Confluence. You have them on your Jira, not on Confluence. All right. I don't know if there's any further question. Okay, if there are no further questions, I think that will be end of the class for now. Today, I won't be giving any assignments for us, to us rather, because it's Valentine. So let's enjoy our evening, enjoy the rest of the week. On Saturday, when we continue the class, Innocent is happy. On Saturday, we resume assignment, okay? So in the spirit of love, no assignments today. So thank you once again for your time, and do have a wonderful night rest. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.